Welcome to Showboys, a podcast that delves into the world of film and TV. Hosts Nick and Mike take their water cooler talk from the office to the web as they discuss their favorite movies, shows, and all their content in between. In this week's episode, the boys discuss the terrifying horrors of true crime, some of their favorite scary games, and what types of horror send shivers down their spines. So, what's spooky?
Welcome to Showboys. My name's Nick, joined as always, my co-host Mike. We are here with another special October episode where we'll be diving into some recent releases and more spooky content. Mike, how are you tonight?
Not that bad, considering. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. I think I've been getting some good sleep, so I'm gonna stay up a little later, I think, tonight.
Must be nice.
This is gonna be a good 4-hour episode, by the way.
Oh, nice.
I hope you are ready.
I will do my best.
All right, that's good.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Before we get into the episode, though, we wanted to update everyone on a few things. So, as you've probably heard us talk about quite a bit in our episodes, we do have a Facebook page where we post the links to our new episode releases. We'll tease, what topic the upcoming episode might be about. We'll post other random Showboys related things about shows or movies we're watching or other interesting, related topics. We're getting really close to having 100 likes and followers. So, as always, we're asking that if you haven't liked our Facebook page yet, please do head over to facebook.com/showboyspodcast. Like, follow, please, and invite your friends if you think they would enjoy what we're offering you guys. We're super close. We really want to get over that 100 hump. So any help would be greatly appreciated. And while you're at it, go ahead and give our Instagram, our Twitter, and our YouTube page a follow. Instagram and Twitter, we are at Showboys Podcast. And if you search Showboys Podcast on YouTube, you should be able to find us. So I think there's a way we can actually make it a little easier to search us on YouTube, Nick.
Yeah, there is a way, and it's very tightly related to your insistent note about Facebook. Definitely subscribe to our channel on YouTube. It's Showboys Podcast, and we'll include a link wherever possible. If you go to our Facebook page and you click the watch button in the top rightish below the banner, that will take you to our YouTube page. Basically, we can get a customized Showboys Podcast URL once we get to 100 subscribers. So that is our current goal, is to kind of get that bumped up. And kind of help that too, we've updated our YouTube page as well to kind of better filter the content and kind of push out what's recent, what's most popular, things like that. We also have 2 playlists, if you will. There's our obviously more frequent what's watching, but we have our sole what's playing episode. You can go listen to that and learn what New World is. But hopefully we're going to have some more of those in the future.
Yeah, really looking forward to talking about more game-related stuff for sure, since you and I and even Cody are all kind of avid gamers in our own right. So think it'd be fun to bring that more into play. To go along with what Nick said about finding our YouTube page, like you said, there's a link on our Facebook page. And also, if you happen to listen to us on anchor.fm/show-boys, there is a link for our YouTube page there as well. Free to subscribe, and it'll just allow you to get notifications whenever we post anything new. Also, if you do subscribe, please hit the notification bell as well. Now that we got all that boring stuff out of the way, thank you for sitting through it. Just wanted to tease one more little thing before we get into our episode. Last weekend, we recorded a very, very fun episode with our good friends from That Strange podcast. And we talked about a really interesting topic. I don't want to give too much away, but it was
strange.
It was very strange and very spooky and creepy and unsettling. And if you're a fan of all of that stuff, or if you're a fan of That Strange podcast, I think you'll really enjoy our episode that comes out next Monday. So without further ado, Nick, what are we talking about tonight?
Tonight, I think we've chosen to talk about a particular subject to kind of kick things off, and then we'll kind of just trail into whatever comes next. The primary topic for tonight, and we'll keep it briefly short just because it is a particularly realistically or real horrifying situation. It's not even
realism. 10 out of 10.
Yeah, 10 out. It's 100% real. Like it's that kind of scary shit.
Yeah.
But then also, I think that the trailing off will be important this episode, just because we've been very thematic this month, and we have been hitting a lot of solid topics. So this will give us a chance just kind of to rant and ramble a bit. But we will kick things off by talking about the very popular Netflix documentary called American Murder: The Family Next Door. Was that the correct name in its entirety?
Yeah. This documentary follows the story of Chris and Shanann Watts and their case. I believe it took place out in Colorado.
Yes, sir.
Thinking
Denver.
Yeah. A very recent case, I would say, within the last year or two.
Happened in 2018. The case and all that wrapped up in 2019, I believe.
I promise that I actually did watch this. But yeah, no, it's a very interesting and incredibly sad and horrific story and case. And I've actually kind of followed the story for about 6 months or so. I originally stumbled onto the Watts family story on a YouTube channel that I watch quite frequently called JCS Criminal Psychology. His channel is really fascinating. He analyzes interrogation videos. And one of the first videos he had on his channel is a 3-part series about the Watts case. On top of that, there's another true crime YouTube channel called That Chapter that just goes over case after case after case of crazy true crime stories. And also he has a nice video on the Watts case. We can provide links for all those videos in our YouTube description. So if you're curious, you can feel free to check them out. But yeah, what a story. Yeah,
it's pretty gross overall. I mean, kind of the story aside, I think a lot of people are familiar with it. I was completely unaware, but obviously it was very televised at the time, very high profile. I think the Netflix thing, usually, I think the creative style that the documentary took to it is kind of the big highlight there, outside of obviously the very tragic story it tells.
right.
But it is incredible. I think it's just a coincidence in the story that the wife had that much content.
Right. Yeah. So if you're not familiar with the case, I mean, we're not a true crime podcast, so we're not going to really focus on the case itself, but just for all intents and purposes for you to know what we're talking about. If you haven't seen the documentary or heard the story, basically it's a love affair gone horribly, horribly wrong. Chris Watts ends up brutally murdering his wife and children and gets caught. And it's disgusting and vile and absolutely terrible. And super depressing, obviously. So I kind of don't really want to focus too much on the case itself, but more so like the way, like you were saying, Nick, how the creators presented the documentary, because at least when I watched it, I found it to be kind of like a unique take on the documentary style. Like, unlike most documentaries, the crew didn't really sit down with anyone involved in the case and have like interviews where, you know, the people involved are talking to the camera and kind of unfolding the story for you. The entire thing is played out through, police body cam footage, interrogation footage, news reports and broadcasts, or like you mentioned, social media videos from Shanann Watts, which is Chris's wife. Yeah, I had never really seen a documentary present itself like that before. Have you, did you notice that at all?
I mean, I definitely that was the big takeaway, like instantly, because the first half is very much so that, and I thought that was interesting style, even though I'm not a huge fan of the kind of murder documentary type things. The first part was definitely interesting, but it still did not do enough to capture my interest as someone that dislikes that genre.
Right.
But it was cool, but obviously a lot of it lends itself to the fact that there was so much to work with to build this narrative, you know, completely from the outside. And they even mention at one point in the documentary how, you know, Reddit and just places on the internet, people were analyzing that footage and coming up with, you know, theories and different scenarios and timelines of how things played out and like why what happened, just based on her YouTube or her Facebook content and live streams, by like really digging in and, you know, probably over interpreting that content.
Yeah. Yeah, it's we as you said that, you know, talking about people on the internet and like internet sleuthing, you know, and being internet detectives and trying to figure things out. I'm going to try not to forget that, because that kind of made me think of something that would take us down a huge rabbit trail that I don't want to like do at this very moment. So hopefully I remember and don't forget later. But yeah, you're right. The wife, Shanann, had a very active Facebook page, and she was always posting videos and stuff. And my wife was curious, because I watch this with my wife. She's a huge like true crime fan and whatnot. And she was like, why does this lady have, like, why is she posting all these videos all the time? Turns out she was like what did Becca find out? She's like a vitamin or like mineral patch salesperson type thing, kind of like almost like an Arbonne or whatever. Other
so that's kind of the filler stuff
yeah.
in between that. So that's probably that explains her heavy presence,
Yeah.
or at least, you know, very likely to hit the record or go live button.
Right. And it turned out to be kind of, I guess, well, I don't know. were there many like details of or like things that the investigators were able to pick up on through her like social media videos and stuff? Or did the creators of the documentary just kind of use that as like footage for the documentary?
I think they definitely just use it as kind of like filler, or at least to help paint the picture.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as far as like I think the investigation went and all of that, they really just kind of dug into the facts of what happened, and really then the interrogation section, which I was falling asleep until the interrogation part kind of picked up there. So then my interest was pretty piqued just at the way that unfolded, because I was expecting that to happen, and then the documentary to kind of like weave these other possibilities in there to kind of try to discredit that. But really, to me, it just kind of kept cementing everything. Yeah, it just kept doubling down on that, and I'm just like the whole time just like, what the fuck?
I know you're not like a super huge true crime fan, but if any of you guys listening are fans of true crime, I highly recommend watching the JCS Criminal Psychology videos that dissects and analyzes the interrogation footage of Chris. It's super fascinating. He does a great job breaking everything down and kind of explaining what the investigators are most likely seeing and picking up on, like from his body language or the way he answers questions, or all of the different things that you could pick up watching somebody be interrogated. And it's just super fascinating. So yeah,
I do want to watch those though. That seems very interesting. At least, especially when I hear Cody talk about things where the whole time he was just screaming, lawyer. Like, do need a lawyer, right or wrong. But when you pick apart those interrogations and like the methods used and what's legal and like what's a little
Right. Yeah, I wish Cody could be here so bad, because him being an attorney, I always love having conversations about true crime stuff with him, because it's true. Like there's like a definitely like a gray line that the investigators kind of tiptoe down, and it's interesting because like you have to be ethical and like fair, right, during the investigation, but also like a lot, like the majority of times, like the investigators know, like they know this person in front of them did something heinous, but they got to get them to like spill the beans, right? So it's like sitting there watching these interrogation videos, it's like, oh, that kind of seems like the psychological like warfare they're doing to this person to get them to say what they need them to say. It's kind of messed up, but also like if this person did what they're being accused of, like I guess I don't really care how they get the answer, you know what I mean? Like as long as it's true, like that's the person who is rightfully guilty.
Yeah, and I would say big props to the creators of the documentary, because they didn't lead on to what the police knew at that time of like the polygraph and stuff. So obviously outside of the documentary, the police knew way more than what the documentary led on, because it kept you in the dark as to the full story. But obviously once he failed the polygraph test, and I could see outside of what happened, being true, in a different situation, say he didn't do it, evidence aside, right? Say he didn't do it, or someone didn't do it. I would say their tactics that's where it becomes very gray after you fail a polygraph test, and then they really start kind of leaning into you and trying to extract that confession. I feel like there could have been an argument in his situation of that, how that interrogation room happened, that they kind of coerced that confession. But in light of all the other evidence,
the fact that he actually did it, it's like, kind of don't really care.
if they were like legit missing and were to never be found, I would maybe argue that they kind of coerced him to make a confession, but he knew where to find them, so it all kind of stacks up.
Right. And there are plenty of cases of people being coerced and falsely accused of things, and like investigators keeping somebody in the interrogation room for like 18 hours overnight, so like by the time they get to the questioning part, like they're sleep deprived, mentally exhausted, and like you can basically get them to say whatever you want them to say as long as you know how to ask the questions to get the answers you want, right? So that's the interesting aspect of true crime that I think I enjoy learning about, I guess. The interrogations are just fascinating. But you might be wondering why exactly we decided to talk about this in the third week of our October, horror themed month of podcast episodes. And that is a pretty valid thought of you to have. But there's just something like, even though true crime is not specifically horror, like it is absolutely terrifying and scary that there are people, real people in like normal society that are capable of doing things like Chris did, or any other case. And
one thing that someone had told me, because from someone who had watched the case evolve and was just way more plugged into it, outside of the documentary, is I guess the documentary did not do it justice as to how horrifying the things he did were. Because I would say the documentary is overall lacking of those details. And I guess kind of like the one hint there is briefly in the documentary, they show that measuring tape over the hole of the tank, and like it flashed by really quick, but I was like, how big was that? It didn't look to be very big. So that was just kind of in the back of my mind. But here it turns out like there's actually the details of the importance of that, because you have to make something fit down there without saying too much. And I mean, what he did was kind of like from a horror movie.
And there are some like little spooky coincidental things that pop up in this documentary that some people are, passed around the internet that are kind of interesting. One being that at the point in the documentary when Chris and the police officer go to his neighbor's house to review his neighbor's like security camera footage or whatever of that, like kind of shows Chris's driveway. There's a moment after they watch the footage where like the neighbor turns his TV back onto like whatever TV was playing. I believe like FX was the channel that his TV was on.
Nat Geo, I think.
A fetus pop, like it's a trailer for, I believe, American Horror Story, like is playing on the TV, and a fetus pops up, right? Like an embryo, like in the egg or whatever. And like Chris sees it out of the corner of his eye and he's like, oh, and she's pregnant. Like he literally says that to the police officer. And then that image goes away, and the next image that pops up is a skull that's being like engulfed in like a black goopy like liquid, oozy liquid.
What the fuck?
And like you can go back and watch, I'm sure you can find clips on YouTube, or you can go watch the Netflix documentary. But what makes that interesting and kind of spooky and very coincidental is Shanann was pregnant when she was murdered. And oh God, I just hate like saying this out loud, but like his children's bodies were put into an oil tank. So like it's very coincidental that while he's talking to a police officer about his missing wife and children, that those images would flash up on a TV that he's standing like right beside.
Yeah.
Super weird, kind of creepy.
Yeah, that is wild. And then, I mean, that scene, I like the body cam footage. That's really cool that much of that was available. But that whole, especially after you get to the end of it and you just know what happened, and you obviously that whole sense of you take everything in a different perspective once you know the outcome. When his neighbor was like, after he left, talking to the cop, like, man, he is acting weird, and you see, and Chris at one point when they're watching it, and he just like puts his hands on his head when he sees that his truck is visible, like backed up to the garage.
You can tell he's like, oh crap.
Yeah, like dude's sweating bullets, and
yeah. Very, very interesting. Yeah. And like, as someone who knew the story, prior to watching the Netflix doc, like as I was rewatching all of the body cam footage that I've already seen, it's just like, he might as well have guilty, like written right across his forehead. It's, just crazy. Excuse me. The other spooky thing that's floating around the internet. Wow, that was actually not planned to use that word, but it fits nicely. In another scene, I believe it was prior to Chris and the police officer going over to the neighbor's house, when Chris, the police officer, and trying to remember Shanann's friend's name that actually called the police to check on her. I think her name was Nicole. I know his like mistress, her name was also Nicole or Nikki, but I believe Shanann's friend who got the police out to the house to check, to do a welfare check, I believe her name was also Nicole. Anyways, regardless, when they're in Chris's house, kind of going over just the generic questioning at first, there's a scene where in the background behind Chris, from where the police officer is standing, because you're still seeing the body cam footage, you can kind of see into a room like in the back corner of the part of the house they're in. And for a quick few seconds, you can see two girls in the room, like playing, like just pass out from the corner of the wall and then back into the unseen part. And then from the other side of the room, the same thing. You can see a little girl come, like kind of her body poke around the corner and then go back in. And it's not really something that I noticed, my first, watching, the case videos on YouTube, but I noticed watching the documentary, and then I saw, articles and stuff floating around, and I thought it was very, very creepy. Did you actually notice that, Nick, when you were watching?
At all, and that was just kind of like something Google suggested to me as an article, one of those stupid articles people write, but it was like, people are seeing like the kids' ghosts in the house. So obviously I had to click on it because that popped up like 4 hours ago, and
right,
it was real primed. But I can't help but think, obviously they never showed it, and the one, that friend girl, she went into that room at one point. Yes. So I don't know if she had like her kids with her or whatever, even though they were never shown. That would be the only kind of explanation of it, because it's not even like ghostly kids. It's like physical children are in that room.
Yeah. So you are 100% correct. It's not actually anything creepy at all. If you look closely just at the scene itself, compared to footage of the Watts children, like it clearly is not them. Like the hair of the girls in the room is like really long, and all throughout the documentary, you see the Watts children have kind of like short hair. So besides that, there is a scene where Nicole is holding one of her children, which is a girl with long brown hair, which is one of the girls that you see in that room. So hate to be the bearer of bad news, but yeah, totally just Nicole's children playing back there.
It's still just creepy. Especially just the peripherals of it. Even think of like his neighbor, like that dude had that dude in his house at one point during that whole thing.
Ugh. Yeah. Yeah, it definitely was jarring at first because you're like, I haven't seen any kids in any scene leading up to this point, and he had 2 daughters, and there are clearly 2 girls in that back room. So I kind of see where the speculation and cause of concern has come from, but come on, people, just do a little research.
It's those annoying, clickbait articles, which I hate so much. The ones where you read the header, like the title, and you have to read it 3 times for it to make sense because the English is so poor.
Yeah.
Or there's just no punctuation or whatever. It's really just like trigger words kind of spread together.
Yeah, exactly.
Shit's garbage. But you gotta click it.
That's right. You gotta get those numbers up.
It leads to good things. You just don't just click them and take them verbatim. That's my philosophy on that crap.
Yep. But hey, it's kind of like we were saying, kind of still a little creepy when you see it. But yeah, I don't know. It's just this case, as disturbing as it is, isn't even really like the most disturbing case that I've seen in true crime stuff. And like, I'm thinking of one in particular that I stumbled on watching the YouTube channel That Chapter. There's a fella named Israel Keys, and his story is literally like it's like it was written for a serial killer movie. Like it does not sound real at all.
Murder.
And it's like it's just the fact that people like that exist, it to me is more scary than any horror genre thing that you could throw at me,
Yeah, and I think that's why, especially recent ones like the Chris Watts thing is particularly just creepy and spooky because it's like a year old. There's all that. It's kind of that look into all this content, social media, the body cam, just like how much was like transparent and all that, and just how close it gets you to it, because it wasn't like reenactments or dramatizations. They just used real stuff and pieced it together.
Yeah.
And I think that's the really creepy thing. And especially kind of how he just kind of did it.
Yeah.
Kind of, it was almost, they say those things are premeditated most of the time. But I might argue how much of that was premeditated for him, because he didn't have much of a plan beyond that. Because he sucked at the interrogation and he just kind of just owned up to it.
Yeah, yes and no. I believe that it was premeditated in some fashion because, like, he tried to dispose of the bodies, right? And
Well, I mean, he took him to his work site where he was supposed to be that day.
Yeah, I guess that's true too. Not
you know what I mean? Like, it really kind of
just,
in my mind, like, it kind of just happened. Obviously,
true.
I think he was like messed up enough to do that, but also stupid enough to think that he could just do it at the same time. Because the way it all kind of fell into place, he just backed his truck up to the garage, obviously loaded them, drove to his work site.
Yeah,
and just like the sequences of it,
terrible.
And I just kind of I rewatched the clip that you're talking about of what was on the TV after he played that, and he was, the neighbors playing this footage, and this is like this footage, might have your wife and kids in it, and he was like not looking at the TV, he was talking while the TV was playing. So that's just where, looking back on it, it's very apparent how guilty he was, because wouldn't you be like glued to that TV being like, are they going to show up?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's just like a heartbreaking thing that you notice in the interrogation videos. Whenever he talks about his kids, like he doesn't even really refer to them as his kids or his daughters or by their names. Like, he is constantly saying, those girls, or like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
I think I picked up on that a little bit.
Like he can't even say, I just want to find my children. I didn't hurt my children. I didn't hurt my daughters. I didn't hurt CC, and I can't remember his other daughter's name.
Yeah, dude sucked.
I didn't hurt those girls. I didn't do anything to those girls. Like, it's just it just like makes me sick to my stomach even thinking about that.
Yeah, it's a disassociation thing.
Yeah.
Say a dissociative disorder kind of thing, whatever was taken in there. And
yeah.
And it's really, and when the officer is kind of after he fails the polygraph, and they come in and they kind of like play hardball with him and like, listen, we know what happened. We know about the girlfriend, and they start painting this picture as to why he did it. And still at that point, I'm sitting there like, that can't be the reason he did it, because that is a pretty black and white way to look at life. Like, I got a new girlfriend that I really like, so I'm just going to completely erase my existing life.
Yeah, it can't exist at all.
Like, dude, nothing's that simple ever.
Right. Yeah.
So
it's tragic.
Where do you work? At Apache or Antero?
I can't remember exactly, but definitely not making us oil and gas guys look good.
No,
that's for sure. But on the other hand, he worked for the operator, and so I guess we got that going for us.
Yeah.
But yeah, you want to hear some interesting stuff about this Israel Keys guy and like why this like literally does not sound real? It sounds like the plot of a movie.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, sorry for the throat clear. So we have this fella named Israel Keys.
Badass name.
Right. He, went through the military of some sort, and ended up being discharged, whatever. This dude literally, like, he killed a lot of people, most of which we'll never know about because he killed himself in prison. He was caught eventually, and was in prison, ended up taking his own life. But this dude literally like hid kill kits in different states for like years, and would return to that area years later and like murder people with the like kit that he left in that area for that specific reason, and then would like go back to wherever he was living, and like he had victims all over the place. The one he ended up getting caught for was in Oregon, but he's been in New York, Chicago, Texas, Vermont, like all over. Like,
what were these hiding spots like?
Like, he would have like a 5-gallon bucket full of stuff or something and like bury it.
Damn. Okay.
And then like go back and dig it up and be like, oh, I feel like killing someone today. Like, what? This is real life?
Damn, we can barely remember our phone chargers. This dude's putting murder kits in the ground all over the country. That's prepared right there.
Dude, this dude was like, I mean,
how recent is all this?
Let me see. He
stumped him.
I'm trying to see when he got caught, when he got arrested. He was arrested in 2012. So, not that long ago.
That's pretty recent.
Yeah, it's just like this dude makes like Ted Bundy look like an amateur, you know?
What kind of did he have? You know, obviously like Ted Bundy and a lot of them had like an MO and like a kind of a preferred victim. Did this guy have anything? Or it was just
I don't think like they knew enough of his victims to like be able to determine that. The victim that he got arrested for, that story also is just like off the walls, insane. And I don't really want to like spend a ton of time going like digging into the case itself, but if you want to look it up. It's very interesting. That chapter has a very interesting video covering the case, which we can also provide a link for if you want to look at. But like, I mean, that just has like extremely disturbing horror movie type vibes, you know, but it's not fake. It's real. Like, it really happened. And that is,
I think
so
when the
scary.
more day to day, like the kind of like thinking back, like, you know, day to day, somebody probably walked, you know, within a decent proximity of one of these murder kits. And just to think that, you know, you walk into the park or you going somewhere, you might be in close proximity to one of these nefarious things. You know what I mean? Kinda,
Yeah.
So it makes everyday life seem a little less safe.
Yeah, and it's just like a lot of these people, these like psychopaths, and until they get caught, like seem like everyday normal people, which is so terrifying. Like, you could know somebody like this right now and not even know about it, which is insane.
Yeah, and I feel like the other hard part there is because, you know, there's those situations where it's like, oh, I saw that coming because so and so was, I always knew that person was weird, or, you know, they had a, you know, there's something about them. But the issue with that is you can say that about so many people, but probably most of them are just legit like weird, or they have some sort of like legit issue. But occasionally one of those people, which is why people go around thinking these things, is exactly what you think they might do. Like, oh, it makes sense that person killed someone.
Yeah. I'm looking here, and it says he may be linked to as many as 11 deaths in the United States, and there might be more victims outside of the country, but we'll never know because he's dead. So, but yeah, it's just so unsettling. And
so how do they know he had like multiple victims?
He did confess to some, I think. Again, I haven't. I watched the video covering the case like a while ago, several months ago. So all the details are not like super fresh in my mind. But yeah, it's just insane.
Yeah, I think what I like, this stuff is when it's kind of like put into a movie or dramatized in a series.
So you can pretend like it's just a movie or a TV show.
No, it's just something about that format that I find it more intriguing. Maybe because they cut out a lot of the drier stuff, and they kind of, make a movie out of it or a series. It's just something about it having that more movie dramatic effect. Just kind of paints the picture better for me instead of getting into all the details. Because to me, it's just kind of like, okay, Cliff Notes. Dude was insane,
right.
Murdered tons of people. So let's kind of, just show me the drama of it instead of kind of. That's like Making a Murderer. I think I've seen that in passing as the wife watched it, but I could never sit down and watch it because it feels like just cat and mouse or just a lot of toying with me with with the information. Like, just tell me what the fuck's happening here.
Yeah.
And I think that's my overall consensus with like the matter.
Yeah, I don't think I may have watched 2 episodes of Making a Murderer, but and even as someone who is a fan of the true crime genre, like I didn't finish it and really struggled to get through the 2 episodes I did actually watch. So I totally know what you're saying there. There is, so like this kind of ties into what we were just talking about, but also what I was talking about earlier about, internet sleuths and internet detectives. There is another really good documentary on Netflix called Don't F with Cats, and covers like another absolutely bonkers serial killer case. But the presentation of the documentary itself is actually super, super well done. And it's kind of in the exact opposite vein as American Murder, where I think what makes it so good is probably like 80% of it is being told by the internet sleuths themselves, interviewed by the documentary crew. And it's just like, so well done. The 2 main internet investigators are like actually really super smart, kind of, and it's really insane learning how they actually solved this case like way before authorities ever did. And like they even tried to tell the authorities, and kind of like the cops, this kind of like mainly took place up in Canada. The cops kind of never really followed through or followed up on all the stuff that these internet detectives were, feeding them. So it's like really, really fascinating story. Also another sad story because people actually died, but yeah, I would definitely recommend watching Don't F with Cats if you haven't seen it already. I think that one could actually hold your attention.
Yeah, that one probably has more of a chance because it's a documentary, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I found the one specifically that I was kind of like thinking of in the back of my mind, and it's a Netflix film that came out last year called Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil, and Vile. And it's basically where Zac Efron portrays Ted Bundy.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that. So
he looks like eerily similar to him in that movie.
Right. And I think I like because it's a period piece. And just, they capture that, 60s or 70s or whenever that was. And that probably like upsets kind of like more true crime buffs and people that like the actual details of it, but that's just kind of the way I like this stuff packaged up.
No, and I think if there's one takeaway from this episode tonight, if you are a film creator and you want Showboys to like your stuff, to make it a period piece.
Yeah.
Immediately
we love period pieces.
Yeah. Immediately, like, all I got to do is see like the first 30 seconds. Doesn't matter how bad it actually is. I will love it. And I feel like you're pretty much like the exact same as me.
If you do enough world building,
yeah,
whether it's real or fake, I'm probably just gonna, if the characters suck, the acting sucks, but the environment and world is just off the charts, I'm gonna just stare at that the whole time.
I'll keep watching. Don't care, and I'll love it. Oh man.
You know what else looks scary on Netflix? The Cabin with Bert. That looks terrifying.
Anything about Bert is terrifying because he never wears clothes.
Yeah, I mean he's in like a Speedo in the trailer. It's like the first thing you see.
Oh, that's both beautiful and absolutely disgusting at the same time.
Crime against humanity.
Man, hey, speaking of serial killers, do you know what I just saw yesterday?
A dead body.
No, actually, I did not. That would be awful. I saw some news that Dexter is going to be returning as a limited series, 10-episode run on Showtime. And Michael C. Hall, the actor who plays Dexter, is returning to reprise his role.
That's interesting because I've never finished it. I think I made it like 3 seasons. But I heard that it's one of those with a bad ending.
I
might be wrong.
So I've seen the whole thing, and I can understand why people would think the ending is bad. I didn't think the ending was amazing, but I don't think that it was as terrible as everyone made it out to be.
Gotcha. Does it make sense having 10 more episodes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because it ends on a note, a cliffhanger note, kind of, where it could definitely continue. So I'm kind of excited to see what comes of that. I really enjoyed that show, and 10 episodes. That's sorry I have the hiccups, but yeah, that's a nice chunk of episodes to tell an interesting story. So
is this the new theme? Is instead of doing remakes, reboots, and all that, they're just going to extend prior things because The West Wing is getting some sort of reunion episode or season. I'm not sure, but there's those two things that are happening right now, and there's always talks of whether it's Friends or whatever the show might be,
right?
Getting some sort of new season.
Yeah, and not to go off on a completely unrelated tangent, but like that kind of stuff drives me insane and is one of the main reasons why I am not a huge fan of like Nintendo per se.
I've heard this one.
Because like can you not think of something new? Like you can't think of a new IP Nintendo. You have to have like Mario 84. Like
so
how many times are we gonna play Mario and platform our way to save Princess Peach? Like how many non-reboots but reboots of Full House are we gonna have? Like just create something new, create a new story, create new characters. Like I want to see something new. I want to play something new.
So would you rather them just remake something? Okay, say like Mario, they just make the latest Mario that's a platformer, or the latest Mario Kart, right? Just new stuff, updated, whatever. Or would you prefer they take that IP and put like a new spin on it and do something else? When you say do something new and creative, do you mean that, or do you mean like fuck Mario, fuck all the words that belong to that thing and make something completely new?
So if we're gonna use the example of games and Mario like we are right now, so when they came out with Mario Kart, I'm okay with something like that. Like, sure, you're using the same characters, but like, it's a driving game. It's not a platformer. It's like a different experience using the same characters. Which, as I'm saying this, I guess I'm invalidating my point of continuing series. But like at the same time, when we're talking about shows, to go back to the random few times that we've brought up like series lengths of, like how we're seeing a lot of TV shows hit that sweet spot of like 3 to 5 seasons and then the series being over. Like I enjoy that because, like we've said before, you're most likely going to end on a strong note because you've not unnecessarily drug out the story you're trying to tell. So instead of like picking up, I don't know, just like, I don't know. Because now I feel like I'm in the middle because I'm excited for Dexter, but I'm then arguing against having Dexter, I hate you.
So I mean,
how do you feel about it?
I like update like reboots when it comes to just completely remaking a game that existed before, on the whole game topic. But when it comes to shows, definitely shows, you need to make a new show in the IP. I'm trying to think of a way to more distinguish that. So not the Full House. Don't do the Fuller House thing. That's really stupid to me, because that's just like almost continuing something in maybe not the cleanest way, because you're just trying to piggyback off of exactly what was before.
Yeah, you're just trying to recreate off of people's nostalgia.
Right. So, but in the case of like what they're doing with Lord of the Rings, Amazon is making a very high budget, same quality as the movies, but it's a series and a show about a completely different time, stories, characters, some overlap, but it's its own thing, right? And the same thing they want to do with Game of Thrones. It's a completely different series, none of the same characters, but in the same IP. So that's kind of where the things I like to see. But when you're just kind of like remaking things and not justifying it within the IP, right, or the storyline or whatever, that's where it gets weird and messy and kind of uninteresting.
Yeah. I think also in the case of like Lord of the Rings, for example, there's so much story there and so much content to create stories that like a TV show or series is justifiable, whereas something like Full House is like, I mean, you're literally just banking on people missing the original Full House and then wanting to watch this. You're not, I mean, technically you're telling a different story, but it's the same story. Just now the children are in the adults' place and they have new children. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like right. With the Lord of the Rings series, you're getting a completely new story. It's just in the same environment. And then in terms of games, like I don't mind reboots and like what's the actual term of like just like updating a game, like a remake or whatever.
It's they like Microsoft likes to say definitive edition for like the Age of Empires.
Yeah.
Usually something. So like it was Spyro Reforged, I believe, for that, and then there was Crash Bandicoot. I forget what they used there, but
yeah, like remastered. That's
basically remaster would be the blanket term.
For games, it kind of makes sense because, especially games on like much older consoles, like the technology has improved so much that like even though it's the same game, graphically and mechanically, because of the systems and the upgrade and the technology that they're using to create and the game engines and all that stuff, it's almost like a completely new experience, even though you're playing the same story. Like it looks so much better, it plays so much smoother and stuff like that. So I kind of give games a little bit of a break on remastering and stuff, but not you, Nintendo. Not you.
Not Nintendo. So that same topic, but with like serial killers. Like, do you think they should be original all the time? Do you hate knockoff serial killers?
Yeah. I mean, come up with your own shtick. I mean, we already had a Ted Bundy. We don't need another. That was really awful. I didn't mean that. That was a terrible joke. One other thing about what you're talking about is I forget exactly what you called it, but as far as like creating spin-off type series from a world in a show, right? So to kind of like bring it back to the horror realm, like you have The Walking Dead, and I forget exactly. Yeah, it's super long. Definitely glad that that's ending because it got uninteresting like 5 seasons ago. And this is coming from someone who's read almost all the comics.
Wait a second. It's not done yet?
I believe next season is the final season.
Holy crap. I was done after season like 4 or 5.
Yeah. But
I thought that ended. My bad.
No, they have had one spinoff that's been airing for several years called Fear the Walking Dead, which, you know, different group of characters from a different point in the outbreak or whatever. So it's kind of cool because you kind of are in the same world, but it's a different story with different characters. So that's okay. And then like there's another new Walking Dead series that's about to start, and it's again at a different time in the apocalypse, outbreak, whatever you want to call it, with different characters telling a completely different story. So like, while I don't think The Walking Dead has necessarily been executing strongly and maintaining the great show that it was when it first came out, like the way that they're still milking that franchise for money is a little more acceptable in my book because they're trying to tell at least different stories, you know, using the same general source material, if that makes any sense at all.
No, and that's the cool thing about those IPs, like Fallout. You know, you make a new game, the character wakes up in a different vault in a different part of the country, different kind of thing going on. So I think having, you know, multiple shows or even like a movie in the Walking Dead world, because it is an interesting, fun, cool zombie world, you know, that works.
Yeah. I guess to answer the original question that was asked like 15 minutes ago, in which I've completely flip-flopped my stance. It all depends.
It all depends.
It all depends.
So your real anger is just at Nintendo.
Yeah, I just absolutely like hate Nintendo. Like it was awesome when I was like 8, you know, and like Super Mario 3 came out or whatever, and then when I was in middle school and I was, you know, slinging Pokemon with my friends on my Game Boy, like that was great. But now we're on like our 25th iteration of Pokemon and like the 112th iteration of Mario and like your 32nd game of Zelda, and it's like, okay, we get it. We get
Before 2012, everything was generally better.
True.
That's where, you know, at Nintendo is different then. They didn't have a device, like a new device every year or whatever it is. You know, I can't keep track of. That's my biggest gripe against them is like the device thing is I just get utterly confused on.
They're always so behind.
Yeah, or I think like the only thing that I've even contemplated getting by Nintendo is the Switch, because that's really cool to me.
Yeah.
That no one else really has done since like the PSP. So
Rip.
Yeah, rip the PSP.
So, since we're on the topic of games,
horror,
and we're talking about spooky stuff, like, what's your favorite scary game that you've ever played?
Man, so let's see here. With my one good homie from childhood, he bought or got whatever when we were far too young, the Manhunt game.
Oh, dude, I remember that game.
I mean, look, whatever the year that came out, that was the year, and that was how young we were, and that game was freaking insane, for the time. I think it still is insane for the time. It got banned in multiple countries. And even to the point where the second one was nothing like the first one, because the second one, like the executions were like static screened out, because you're always kind of watching from the security cameras. But man, in the first one, you just committed unadulterated murdered.
Yeah.
And I think
that came out in 2003.
Oh shit! So I was 12.
Oh my gosh. You were playing Manhunt when you were 12?
Yeah, I mean, I watched South Park since I was 7, maybe.
Jeez, but you're not like brutally executing people
no.
watching South Park.
No, I think it just started the desensitization of it early, and so it's just kind of like, yeah, that's just like a game. That's just like a show.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lose my wig over it, but maybe I do. I don't know. I black out sometimes, and I don't really know what happens.
Oh man.
But anyway, but about games. So I mean, while you're playing it, obviously you're the one committing the scary stuff or the horrific stuff. But we would switch because it's a single player game, and we would take turns playing it. And obviously he was better at it because he's a little bit more twisted in that direction. So he has an affinity for that kind of stuff. And one, it's kind of scary to watch because it's like that antsiness you get when you play those kind of games, because you're trying to stay out of sight. It's very kind of like stealthy things. It's not like a shoot 'em up where it's very offensive. It's more kind of like pulled back, and you have to hide from them and get them. So like that's kind of like the anxiety or like the jumpiness of it. So I feel like games can bring like a different sort of scare factor or nerve factor than kind of like watching a movie would.
Yeah, it's kind of like what we talked about in our analog horror episode, where much like analog horror, it puts you in the driver's seat. Like, well, that's my main love for gaming, period, is like even non-scary games. You look at games like Uncharted, for example, like, or The Last of Us is a better example. That game, the storyline of The Last of Us is probably better than 80% of movies I've ever watched.
Okay, so more fitting to your answer, that would be probably my answer for like favorite scary game, because that game legit like scares me.
Yeah. But like, not only are you watching the story unfold, right? And it's, like I was saying, much better than a lot of movies and shows that I've actually watched. But like, you're driving it. You are participating. You are the protagonist of the story. You're actively moving the story forward, which is why I think gaming is such a cool medium for storytelling.
Yeah, and you're actively running from the exploding bubble zombies. That shit is so scary.
Yeah, dude. But it's like a much different approach than passively watching a show or a movie. where you're just waiting for something to happen, like you are the cause of what's happening, right? But yeah, The Last of Us was a pretty scary game to play. But I think probably the scariest game that I've played. Immediately my mind goes to Resident Evil 2 or 4, which were two of my favorite games that I played in my youth. But I would have to say like Dead Space.
I need to play those. They're in my library. And
you've never played Dead Space?
Dude, no, I have all of them in my library, and Crossroads told me to play them many years ago, and I still haven't played them.
Dude, play the first Dead Space.
In the dark.
In the complete dark, like with good headphones on.
Yeah.
It is terrifying.
Yeah, I need to play that for that exact reason.
It is so good.
That's what I'll do after this podcast.
Since you got all that rest, you can just go play Dead Space. Oh, geez.
That's good. That's good. That really encourages me to go play that game some more.
Yeah, it's great. The sequels were okay. 2 was good. 3 was not that great. But the first one,
that's the original. Just speaking, it's craft, it's art.
Yeah. Well, like, funnily, Dead Space, the first one, plays a lot like the early Resident Evil games. Like a ton, except instead of being in a zombie apocalypse, you're the sole person on like a space station craft thingy. So but like the mechanics of the game are basically the same. So
that's a scary setting by itself.
Yeah, but like then imagine, like, have you played not so much like Resident Evil 5 or 6 or some of the newer stuff that are more action oriented, but back when Resident Evil was, strictly a survival horror game, and like when you went to shoot zombies, you would not be able to move, so you would have to stand still to shoot. Or eventually they made it to where like when you're aiming, you walk incredibly slow, like you might as well be standing still. And things like ammo being extremely scarce, so like you have to really pick and choose when you decide to fight or when you just try to run away, and like so it just makes every encounter just super nerve-wracking because you're not sure if you even have enough supplies to like get you through it. So it's like it's scary.
And obviously not to talk too much about gaming, but we'll have to put this on both playlists, I think, at this point.
Yeah.
But I think it's when they start to sequels to games, they always introduce new mechanics that are fun, cool, and great and all, but when you do that, you're taking away from other mechanics. So the first game always has those very core mechanics there in front and center, and that's that's what makes those extra good sometimes.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened with the Dead Space series, and even the Resident Evil series to an extent.
Yeah, like Call of Duty, when you start getting jetpacks and you're like running on walls, like you're taking away some of the other primary mechanics of the game.
Right. So like, what's your favorite? This can be like the last gaming thing we talk about, but like, how there's different genres of horror in film. Like, what's your favorite genre of horror in gaming? Like, is it the survival horror type thing, or is it the more like jump scare type stuff, or maybe even games that really mess with your mind psychologically? Have you ever even really considered that there are different horror genres in gaming, or noticed or anything?
I'll go with the survival ones, because done right, the survival aspect alone can create kind of like its own fear in the right setting. And and completely not even a scary horror game at all. Rust, that game.
Oh yeah.
When you're like barely keeping it together and like nighttime comes, and I've had some legit of my frightening experiences playing that game. Because somehow it translates so well, through your fingertips of the keyboard that you're terrified and you're in a very dire situation. And I particularly have a story of like one of the most terrifying times I've had gaming. And I was playing Rust, and I had just built like a little hut, and I had a door and a lock on it, and it was a key lock. And later in the game, you get like padlocks with like key codes, but the key locks, you have to have the key, and you can drop the key and fucking lose the key. So, night starts setting, and this game obviously has like the whole like voice push to talk, but like within proximity, they were like, to me, one of the first to do that. So I'm in my hut, it's getting dark, and it gets dark. So then all of a sudden, like, you hear these footsteps, like, frantically, like, running around, and then, like, they're getting closer. So that alone is just, like, terrifying, right? Because you're trying to survive, and you really don't have much except these four walls around you. And this dude rolls up and, like, knocks on the door. He's like, let me in, right? This dude took on the persona of, like, a sadistic person. And like was trying to convince me to let him in, as if you would experience in like a scary movie. Yeah. And I just wasn't having it, and he just starts like banging on the door, right? And it was somehow like almost scripted how like terrifying this was. And then eventually he says like goofy things like give me all the chicken or something. But so then he goes away, right? But I'm not, and because the sun was coming out, but I was not convinced he went away. So I knocked down like the back wall of my house, and he was fucking like on the rock that was right behind it, because he was just gonna like murder me when I came out of the house. So I got I don't think he expected that. So I was able to get away or whatever, but just that sequence was just terrifying because it's pitch black in that game, and I actually dropped the key. I think that's also why I had to knock the back door down. It was adrenaline. It was crazy.
Nice.
But that game just has a way of just engulfing you in your dire situation.
Yeah. While we were talking and I was listening to your story there, made me think of another really scary game that I played, which is actually more of the like psychological horror genre. But did you ever play the demo on PS4 called PT?
No.
Okay, so this is when Norman Reedus and Del Toro, the director,
Nice.
were going to remake Silent Hills, or like make a new Silent Hills game or whatever. They put this demo out on the PS4 called PT, and like at first no one really knew what it was, but then for those of the people that actually made it through the demo, like were rewarded with a cutscene where like you come out of this house or something. I never beat it, so I'm trying to remember the video that I saw. But like you come out into the street or whatever, and like Norman Reedus's character turns around, and then it says like Silent Hills or something like that. But anyways, this whole game, the entire game, took place in a hallway, like a 3-hallway, and like you come out, you're in this like little room. You walk through a door, up some stairs, and you're in a hallway. You go down the hallway, and like it's all disheveled, and like picture frames are all crooked and broken, and like plants are knocked over or whatever. You're walking down the hallway, you turn right, and it's another long hallway that looks like it's like at the front of the house because in the middle of the hallway there's the front door. There's like a couple windows on the side. There's a bathroom, and then you go down some stairs into a door. You go into the door, and you pop out in the original hallway that you started in. So like it's just a loop, and to progress, you got to like solve these little puzzles, and all the puzzles are super creepy, and it's very unsettling because it's a lot of audio stuff. Excuse me, hiccups again. A lot of audio scares. It's kind of quiet, but that does a good job of creating a lot of tension and stuff. You see things flash in the window. There's a mirror in the bathroom, and sometimes when you look into it, there's like you see something behind you, and it's just like
that's terrifying.
It's very unsettling, and like I mean, I don't think you can play it anymore. I don't have a PS4 anymore, but I don't think it's available. But if you just like watch some videos on YouTube, but I remember like playing.
What was it called?
It's called PT. They probably just have to search like PT Demo on PS4 or something like that. But like, I played that a few times just in my dark living room, and I was like just absolutely terrified. Let's see if I can find.
I found there's a full playthrough with the ending.
Oh, dude, it was so scary. And then it was really sad because the Silent Hills never actually, got finished. So big rip.
What's also kind of scary about things like that is when you don't have a defined goal and you don't know what at all. You don't know anything, what's happening.
Yeah.
You're just moving your character through this space and you're like, am I supposed to solve puzzles? Is something going to come out? I got to fight it. Is it all just going to fuck with my brain?
Yeah. And like, you haven't, like, there wasn't really a description. Like, you just see PT on the PlayStation Store. The thumbnail art, like, doesn't look like anything scary. And it's literally called PT. So, like, you just open it up and have no idea what to expect. And then all of a sudden you're like, just totally mind ravaged and come out like just terrified and anxious and probably needing to go see a shrink or something.
Yeah, this looks scary.
Yeah, it was a thing, an experience for sure.
I'll have to watch it with some audio on.
Yeah. So in that same vein, do you have like a favorite genre of horror?
Let's see.
Like movie or show wise, like film wise?
I definitely like the shows, I think. And maybe that's just because of the Haunting of Hill House and the new one that came out. But
Bly Manor.
Yeah, I mean, on those two alone, I would say whatever that is, that's my favorite. But things I do enjoy, like I like the Butterfly Effect a lot, and I don't even know if that's particularly horror or scary, but I think the psychological nature of it was good. But I also, I whenever The Ring came out, I probably saw that at too young an age, but that was also something I liked and, had watched periodically over the years. It was always just, when I wanted something scary to watch, I would go watch that just because it like fucks with your brain and there's some scary imagery in there.
Yeah. I remember I saw The Ring like way too many times. That was one of my favorites when I forget exactly when it came out too, but I want to say I was the tail end of middle school, maybe like a freshman in high school or something.
Yeah, and that's one of those, and especially in the 2000s there, I think that was, that's one of those ones where I never had a concept of whether it was good or bad as a movie or whatever. I just knew I liked to watch it for whatever it did, and there's a slew of those, right? So I guess I never really got into the fact that like, is The Village a good movie? I don't know, but I enjoyed watching it from time to time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I kind of agree with you. I mean, not really like a super huge fan of slashers or like the stuff that just tries to shock and awe you with extreme gore or like
Hostel, the first Hostel.
Yeah, Hostel type movies where it's just like
good, but not something I want to rewatch.
Yeah, and like I mean that stuff's like, I don't know, disturbing, but like most of the time it's hard to find a good story to go along with that, right? Because I mean, how do you really tell a good story when you're just basically writing a torture movie, right?
Yeah, and I think that's the trip up for me is where if you just even if you make like kind of like a mediocre or even a bad attempt at a Ring type show or movie, it's not going to lend itself to the, I guess, the cheesiness or the bad tropes that they have in the slashers where there's like the teenagers and there's some sort of like, you know, corny like sex scene or like some sort of like teenage drama, you know what I mean? And there's always like the same characters and you know the one dies and this one's gonna live kind of thing.
Very much live off of tropes for sure. But then you have a movie like Scream that like was fully self-aware and like made fun of itself type deal, but actually also was a really good movie.
Right.
But yeah, I think I tend to lean these days a little more towards the psychological horror myself. Not like a super huge fan of ghostly, haunting, demonic type possessions stuff. Like I'll watch it here and there. Hill House was really great, and I'm glad that I watched that. And I'm looking forward to Bly Manor. But like that kind of stuff kind of lost its luster, you know, handful of years ago for me. I think just because I'm growing out of the jump scare phase, like that stuff doesn't really do it for me anymore, you know.
I think that's I think also that genre has matured with us a bit. You know, because I agree, like the whole verbatim, like normal characters, there's just physically a ghost like haunting you, something like that. That's kind of really lost its punch over the years. So where I feel like it's going is more of the ghost, but it has the psychological ramifications and also the digging in of like the characters aren't just, you know, normal characters. Like these people have fucked up stories and like they've been through terrible things. So, you know what I mean? So, you know, the old way I feel like, you know, Sally moves into a house, it's haunted, the ghost is trying to kill her, versus more so now, Sally moves into the house, she's had a traumatic childhood life, whatever, and she's haunted by literally her own demons.
Right, yeah, that's her trauma. Like it's just a giant allegory for her already traumatized and messed up life. They're just showing it to you in a visual representation. I think that's why I like Hill House so much, you know. It's kind of more than just like a ghost story. It's like they do
you said it's a family drama or whatever you said that on that episode, you know.
Yeah, it's they do a very good job of using the ghosts and haunting stuff as a visual representation of the issues that the family is going through. So you know, kind of movies or shows that are able to execute a plot or an idea story wise like that, like it's hard to not like something like that, right? But I'm always a sucker for zombie movies. Like I would probably have to say that that's probably my favorite horror genre. It's just I don't know what it is. Well, I mean I do know what it is, but I just see like the zombie threat is such a good metaphor for like any type of social commentary you kind of want to put a spin on in your movie or show, right?
So kind of like definitely going back to kind of like War of the Worlds type stuff, the more existential threats to humanity kind of genre.
So like that well, I mean, yeah, I guess, but like very specifically zombies. Like
Okay.
I loved War of the Worlds and what makes that such a cool story. Now let me state
I know
this.
what your favorite one is.
The movie War of the Worlds, or why am I saying War of the Worlds? I'm thinking of World War Z.
Yes. I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, so I loved World War Z, particularly the book. The book was amazing, and this is one of the only times, because I don't know how to read.
I was going to say, you read a book,
right? One of the
was
only
it all pictures?
Maybe.
Okay. I don't read either.
No,
so
it was.
know.
there were more words than pictures.
Okay.
And it's one of the few times that I can say, like outside of the Harry Potter books, that like I actually read the book before the movie came out, so I can I feel like I can have an opinion. But like the whole thing that made that story so scary is the complete. I mean, we kind of have been experiencing it this year, right? The complete inability for global leaders and people to be able to effectively communicate during like a global outbreak of some sort, right? That's the whole terror in the World War Z story, and it's really done well in the book. Or like The Walking Dead, you look at that, the whole thing that makes The Walking Dead scary is not so much the zombie threat, but more so the survivors. You see that play out a lot in the show, and it's played out 10 times harder like in the comics, where like the people that the survivors come across are like way more terrifying, way more brutal, way more messed up than just running into a pack of walkers. And the whole title, The Walking Dead, is actually referring to the survivors being, The Walking Dead. Anyways.
Yeah.
But like you can just, the zombie monster in and of itself is such a good tool to be used for, making whatever metaphor you want to do when you're doing social commentary, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
Plus, like, rotting corpses walking around trying to eat you is kind of scary in and of itself too.
I think why that works so well, especially the zombie one, is more so than aliens or like monsters, is the zombies are like a very, very straightforward, well-defined threat to, they're a good antagonist. But what you're able to do is then fill a lot of more antagonists with actual living characters that are more terrifying. So you have this foundation of, oh yeah, there's always the zombie problem. Meanwhile, if that's not bad enough, you have to deal with psychos.
Yeah, like how are people going to react when society as we know it like no longer exists, right?
Toilet paper is the first problem that's going to occur.
Which we've learned. You will not be able to wipe your butt. But yeah, just when there is no more law, there are no more like societal guidelines that people are obligated to follow. Like that's terrifying. Like what people will stoop to ensure that their survival, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of a scary thing to think about, because there are a lot of really selfish people that, I mean, will only be concerned with themselves, right?
Right.
But what were you gonna say when you were saying you think what my favorite?
Well, so I'll start that line of thought with, how do you feel about the existential threats to humanity? Now, when they're portrayed as the unknown, right? Or it's something you can't see. So whatever the Quiet Place, Bird Box, what's your feelings on like that kind of subgenre of fright?
I love it. Like we kind of hit on Cloverfield, which I think would fall in that same vein, right? Wouldn't you think? Or are you talking about something a little bit different?
Cloverfield's super unique to me because there is physically something threatening, whereas like Bird Box and The Quiet Place, there is something there, but it doesn't rely on showing it. It's always like the wisp of it or the presence of it. Yeah. You know what I mean?
I think as silly as Bird Box was, like, I think conceptually is kind of cool.
Right.
Like, I mean, obviously, everyone walking around in blindfolds and like trying to drive to a grocery store with completely painted windows in your car is really absurd. But
when Wong kills himself, that's like frightening.
Yeah, and just literally the fact that you never see what people are seeing, and you know, you're led to believe that everyone kind of sees something different. And the fact that if you see the thing, it literally makes you kill yourself. Like, that's insane. I just kind of wish that like there was a better way to
functionally
have that play out.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And like Sandra Bullock's character was kind of like big stupid, like dumb, like couldn't really like relate or like, you know, suspend my disbelief, you know.
Yeah. True.
But yeah, I really like stuff like that. It's just kind of goes into, you know, the unknown is just naturally scary, right? Because you don't know.
So I'm really glad that you do enjoy those, because that makes me feel that The Happening is your favorite movie.
Only if by favorite movie you mean it makes me want to recreate the scene where the guy lays down and lets his lawnmower run over him.
I mean, that was a big nothing, right? Or did it turn out to be something? What was it, like the bees or like the air killed him? I forget.
it was like nature, like
angry nature.
It's revenge because we're destroying the earth, pretty much.
Yeah, good old Marky Mark.
Man, that was probably the most disappointing movie I've ever seen. I had such high hopes for that.
I love the use of like his signature, like confused face, like the what the fuck, like.
Yeah, man. I would have to think that he was intentionally like that campy, and like the acting was intentionally that bad, because like, I mean, I don't think Mark Wahlberg's a terrible actor by any means, but like that movie.
Yeah. I wonder what drove them to be like, yeah, Mark Wahlberg's the guy.
I don't know, man. I think M. Night Shyamalan was like riding the wave, thinking he could just do whatever he wanted. He had a couple good movies, you know?
Yeah.
And then that one just sent him like crashing and burning back to earth.
It has to happen. So that's a good flop.
Yeah.
Is there? Do you think there's any kind of like spooky horror scare genre that's just like a flop overall? Like, poor attempt at even being a thing.
It's a good question. Do you have any?
I think of things like The Descent and those kind of really hollow scare type movies.
Yeah.
Where it's just kind of like a group of people, they go somewhere, something bad happens, and it's just
Yeah.
There's not much to it. And I don't even know if like maybe the Hills Have Eyes kind of thing. But like all the spin-offs from the Hills Have Eyes.
Yeah.
Essentially, I think that's like the weakest link. So like you can come out with one of those, and if I get the vibe that's what it is, I'm not even gonna care.
Yeah, whatever the equivalent of like rom-coms in horror, like I don't remember the name of it, and it would probably take me a few minutes to find, but I remember seeing a trailer for a movie last year where basically there was an app that people would download on their phone, and then like when the timer hits 0, they would die or something along those lines. And I remember like if I rolled my eyes any harder, they would have fallen out of my head. Like after I watched the trailer. So like I don't know. I feel like with any genre of movie or show, if you fail to execute your idea, it's going to be bad. But like even if you have a somewhat like goofy or corny or like way out there idea, but somehow are able to like really follow through with your execution, like it's still, fun to watch, or turns out good or whatever, if that makes sense. I'm trying to think of a specific example. Well, okay, so like for example, sorry. Oh geez, kind of like involuntarily swallowed. That's fun. This isn't really like scary horror, but like horror comedy stuff. But like the show that I love to watch, What We Do in the Shadows. Like hearing the concept of that show just kind of makes you think that it would probably be really stupid and not really work out, which basically is like an office type show, but instead of being filmed in an office, you're following a house of vampires as they try to take over Staten Island. Like it sounds completely absurd, but it's probably one of the best TV shows I've ever watched. It's hilarious, and like if you're a fan of horror, like specifically like the old monster movies like vampires and werewolves and stuff like that, like you'll love the show because it plays off of all the tropes and like is super funny and like really brilliantly done. But I don't know if that answered your question at all.
No, I mean it does, and that kind of reminds me of that sphere exists, kind of like the original like scary stuff. Where we're talking about like Frankenstein and werewolves and Dracula. Like that's kind of like the Halloween costume kind of things. Like that's the basis for scary things. In media. That's kind of where it all started. So it's good that there is room for something good but original to kind of come out in that sphere.
Yeah. And like, I don't know, just kind of like talking about that. Do you think that horror comedies should still like what do you think really makes a movie a horror movie? Like, does it have to scare you? Does it have to include some semblance of like a monster or a ghost or something like that? Like can you actually classify a movie like Shaun of the Dead as a horror movie? It's a zombie apocalypse movie, but it's like hilarious comedy, like kind of making fun of zombie movies.
Sure. So, I mean, so there's like psychological thrillers. Like that's, I think, a big sphere, and I think that's the ones I like the most, right? Horror to me is particularly more blood and gore. There's someone or something like mutilating and killing people. So like to me that's horror, and it's kind of like that run from something factor. So like your Jasons. So like to me that's horror. Psychological thrillers would be, Ring, more so than up to the modern sort of Haunting of Hill House. Slashers. I feel like slashers and horror kind of are very similar to me.
Yeah, I can kind of see where you're going with that.
Yeah,
horror is just such a broad term, right? Kind of
yeah,
like when you're talking about music, like rap or metal or something like that's a pretty broad brush to paint with, right? You have like so many subgenres of rap or metal, just like the same thing with horror. Like you got your psychological stuff, you got your ghost stuff, you got your monster stuff, you got your slasher stuff, you got your, I mean, the list can go on, right? So
yeah. I definitely though. I think that is the center of it though, because if you do like I think what the where words come from is that etymology or whatever, but horror, like whatever you're horrified by. So at one point in time, people were horrified by Frankenstein or Dracula, like that was horrifying. So I think our definition of what is horrifying has changed, but all these things are horrific, right?
yeah.
So obviously, I think the hard thing about it is that what we originally were talking about with the Watts case, like what he did was legitimately probably like all the way as horrific as it can get because it was real. What he did was terrible, all the way to the point where you have a rom-com or something like Shaun of the Dead, still technically horror, but it's got a lot more going for it.
Yeah.
That kind of leans away from it.
Well, and like, since you brought it back to the true crime stuff, like even movies like Silence of the Lambs or like Seven, right?
Right.
Would those be considered horror movies? I mean, maybe not. I mean, Silence of the Lambs, you're following a serial killer, right? Seven,
Yeah.
you're following a serial killer, and like the contents of those movies are terrifying and like really scary, intense, and really make you anxious, but it's like kind of more of the thriller aspect type deal. I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. I guess
it's tricky.
that's my answer. I don't know.
Yeah, because like the documentaries about serial killers and all that stuff, them in themselves is not horror, but the subject matter is horrific.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of bleeding of kind of like definitions, no pun intended, but
pun very intended.
Oh, it's intended. Much blood.
Yes.
Blue blood, by the way, because we're killing aliens.
Speaking of, I really want to watch Alien. Like, I'm very sad to say that I've never seen that movie.
That's a good connect there. I mean, that's kind of horror. I would loosely associate that with the genre, because the alien, just the fact that puts something in
scary.
you and it kind of spawns out of your chest.
Yeah.
Face huggers, all that jazz.
Yeah.
It's horror. Like, it's space horror. It's like Dead Space.
Yeah, exactly.
But yes, you should watch Alien. You should watch all the Aliens. I am particularly a fan of the new ones. With they're not called Alien though, are they? Prometheus. Yeah, Prometheus, and then Alien Covenant.
Yes, I've seen both of those, but none of the old ones.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
I really loved Prometheus. I thought that was good, but I mean, apparently that's not like a very well received movie by fans of the franchise.
Yeah, because I would say they're two different franchises, and that is, take it back. That is a good example of taking an existing IP and doing something different with it, right?
Yeah.
Because like the original Alien, it's very kind of like they're on a ship. It's kind of more like a Dead Spacey type thing. More kind of that classic kind of action thriller thing going on, whereas Prometheus is a much more kind of world building, hence why I like it. You know, and they're touching on different things that are in universe, and I'm a sucker for world building, so that's why I liked it. And I obviously like what's his face. I used to know his name a lot better when I argued with
Michael
Doug.
Fassbender.
Yeah. When I would argue with Doug about him legitimately being a good actor, and he thinks he's like the bane of all acting. And I was just like, what are you talking about? Like, everything Michael Fassbender is awesome.
Even Assassin's Creed?
Yes.
I will say I enjoyed that movie, having never played any of the games, so I was just able to enjoy what it was,
Yeah. I think maybe... I can see that one being one where fans of the games did not like the movie, because it wasn't, I would say, a good movie, but it was enjoyable.
Yeah.
As a watch.
Yeah, it wasn't like transcending genres. It was just like, I think I see what you're trying to do. I was entertained.
Yeah, it has potential. I could see that being one where a sequel would be better than the original. Because I think they tried to walk the line between let's make a movie for the fans of the franchise, but let's also make a movie that people not knowing anything about Assassin's Creed, like, or gaming at all, can relate to and like. So I think that's where they messed up. They didn't go all the way one way or the other. Yeah. So like Warcraft, the movie, I thought that was great because they went all the way for fandom.
yeah, I loved that, and hopefully we get some sequels. I think I had heard that it's supposed to be a trilogy.
China's trying to make it happen because they made money over there.
Yeah. So maybe this can be a good place to end with this these last few points here. So two bits of news, I guess, that's kind of related to video game movies and even horror movies.
Hear the air horn.
Earlier today, I watched the trailer for the Monster Hunter movie. It's coming out in December. Did you know that they made a movie
based on the game?
Yeah.
Not at all.
Well, they did. And it comes out in December, and I've never played any of the games, though I've always wanted to play the games. But the movie kind of looks pretty cool. And I think that I will enjoy it solely based off the fact that I've never played a Monster Hunter game, because I'm sure that it's probably they're going to do a terrible job connecting the two. But man, the monsters look kind of cool. I'm not going to lie. They look pretty awesome.
Always been a game I wanted to play, but I think I knew I'd have to devote too much time because I would like it, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, I have that issue all the time.
See, that's horrific. The fear of enjoying something too much.
Yes. The lead actress there is Mia Jovovich. I probably pronounced that wrong, but she actually was the lead actress in the Resident Evil movie franchise, which was a giant disaster. But leads me to my next point. They're like rebooting Resident Evil film stuff. I believe that they're going for maybe a CGI TV series. Let me just Google it real quick. I didn't prepare anything about this.
She's in a bunch of shit.
Yeah, she was in, oh my gosh, one of the scariest movies I've ever seen. And it was about aliens. I think it was called The Fourth Kind.
Oh, yeah.
I think.
Yep.
Dude, that movie. Oh. And I think they actually got in a lot of trouble for that movie because they made the claim that it was based off of like true stories and true events, and turns out it actually was not at all.
Yeah, that was when that stuff was still semi kind of up and coming and fresh.
Yeah.
And it's hard to discern. I remember that. I forgot all about that spooky shit.
Dude, that movie. Whew, it was a great movie. Like, I still get like creeped out just thinking about it. But yes, so looking Resident Evil reboot. They're looking to add to the ever expanding Resident Evil movie franchise. So yeah, that's kind of exciting in a sense. Hopefully they don't follow the same mistakes as their last attempts. There's going to be a TV series on Netflix in the Resident Evil universe. So I don't know. I look at that news and kind of like, hold my breath and approach with caution, because kind of what we hit on earlier, the Resident Evil game franchise is one of my favorites. So I'd really like to see the movie franchise or TV series like really kind of do it justice,
Yeah, and I think it's not a bad strategy. And to me, that's like the Star Wars effect. Is they're taking these IPs and they're just doing multiple different types of things with it. Games, shows, movies. They're kind of executing on all fronts.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a strong strategy, not just because it works for Star Wars so well, but I feel like I enjoy consuming IP that way. Don't just load me up on 20 movies, Marvel. That wasn't fair to say. They have tons of shows too.
Yeah.
But that kind of effect. They have shows, but they were heavy on the movies primarily. The shows, I think, they're going to do the same thing. They're going to go kind of show heavy, I feel like. In the next round of things.
Mm-hmm.
So the more things they do that to, I think the better off things are, and it reduces burnout too.
Yeah, it just gives you like a different approach, different avenue.
Yeah, you can only make so many Resident Evil movies.
Yeah. Well, like, yeah, it just gives you a different version, medium to tell, potentially a different story and stuff, with different mechanics at your disposal and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
But yeah, I think this episode turned out pretty fun. Kind of went all over the place, but I think it was a fun conversation for sure. I think we hit on a lot of cool topics.
I mean, it's going in both playlists. I don't know what to call it. We're gonna have to figure out a name for it.
What's this episode?
Yeah. What is Showboys?
Yeah, good question. But yeah, so hopefully you guys enjoyed the episode tonight. Again, help us hit our goal on Facebook. Help us get over that 100 likes and follows. If you haven't already, like our Facebook page, and if you like what we do, please share it with your friends. And check out our YouTube page and subscribe and click the notification bell. It's free. It's not going to cost you anything, but it'll let you know whenever we upload something, and it'll help us get a fancy custom URL, and that would be amazing. Yeah, and make sure you tune in next week for our really fun and special and disturbing episode with our friends over at That Strange Podcast. It was super fun to do, and I'm really excited for you guys to hear how it turned out. But yeah, I don't know. You got anything else, Nick?
I would just say, even if you don't like our podcast, let us know. Internet bully us. We're good for it. It's all just good feedback. So no matter what, like, subscribe, and share. That's the moral of the story. Yeah, even if you hate it, like, people like watching shit they hate. So listen to this so you can like channel your anger at something, because sports are very up and down lately. and you can't be mad at your favorite sports team all the time.
Yeah, I mean, the Browns are actually winning, so like, what else are you going to be mad at?
Hey, what are all these Browns fans going to be mad at? They should be mad at us and listen to our podcast.
That's right. Tune in, angry or no longer angry Browns fans.
Murder documentaries suck.
Nice. So are we cueing the music now?
Yeah, cue the music. I'm done with this.
Nice.
I'm angry.
Nice. I'm tired. So what do you say we say goodbye to Craig? And we'll
all right.
See you guys next week.
Let me find Craig. He's up to no good. He's probably killing somebody.
Goodbye, Craig.
Later, Craig. Welcome to Showboys. Is that good right there? Just leave it at that.
You're fired.
Damn it. Damn it.